This program is intended for an adult audience. Presented by Midnight Media, Sharpcast Heated, starring your host, Sharply.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome, America, to the Sharpcast, this spectacle, this wonderful show, this cavalcade circus of absolute and utter complete moderate madness as you see a libertarian decry libertarianism. You see a liberal be a little less lazy than the average liberal. You see a Californian talk about how much he hates his state, and you see an Ohioan praise his fucking justice system.
Yep, that's one way to put it, all right.
I'm also liberal, but that's kind of, that's to be expected. I'm from California.
That's a given. That's a given, you commie.
I'm in California. That's where.
Oh yeah, the communist capital of the world.
I remember I got a lot of shit. I remember getting a lot of shit at one point for saying that I live in California. It was like, what the fuck are you doing here? Living in California?
Just for saying you live there.
No, how dare you? There was one guy from Florida. He said to me, he fucking sent a Discord message to me. Florida's better than California by a country mile. Fuck you. And I'm like, what? I have nothing against Florida. What the fuck are you? I've never been there. I don't fucking know.
All I'll say is that we only hear about Florida men. We don't hear about California men. We hear about California girls.
Listen,
we hear about California
man
girls.
Yeah.
You see, California man doesn't do crimes out in the open.
We also never hear about Alaska man either.
I'm
Alaska
not sure.
Man's pretty interesting.
I would think that Alaska man would probably be Bigfoot. Or something along those lines.
Have you forgotten about Alaskan bush people already?
Right.
Have you forgotten about Alaskan bush people already, Helios? People who live out in the wastes of Alaska?
Yeah.
I was thinking more on the lines of the Alaskan bullworm.
Fuck off.
The Alaskan bullworm!
Alaskan bullworm!
Scary!
Well, guys, I know you have interesting things for Sarah Palin, but can we not right now?
Okay, we can not that, and we can dig this. So, this whole conversation actually reminds me of a quote I was actually fed on Twitter, right? Mm-hmm. Twitter, I know, the greatest place to get your facts. But
absolutely, yeah.
There was this guy that randomly messaged me. Context of the conversation's a little irrelevant, but like the statement, right? The statement here is what matters because it sounds weird no matter what context it comes from. Individuality is merely a ploy so groups can seize power and force everyone under their ideals.
That's a take. That is a take.
That is, I think that's a take Hitler would be pretty proud of, but hey,
can't be any worse.
Those accusations are made far too often, but this one's genuine.
Can't be any worse than a take from earlier.
Individuality is nothing. It is merely a ploy.
Of course, Hitler also said things like how fortunate for governments that people do not think. So, not really sure where the man stands. Don't think it matters too much because of what he did in the end versus the things he said, which...
Can't be any worse than a take I saw earlier today that pretty much was saying, hey, thanks to the pandemic, millennials can be able to buy a fucking house and do some fucking adulting.
Yeah, I mean, according to the proud sons of the Aryan race, though, Hitler to them had great economic ideas. Displayed by the fact that at the time, Germany was more economically prosperous than the U.S. as we were going through the Great Depression. But
I don't know about that.
They weren't poor and in squalor. We'll at least say that. But the ultimate trade-off was killing and cooking how many people? We've lost count, right? Like
100 million people.
Oh yeah,
No.
agree. A little bit of a trade-off.
I will say this. The first step Holocaust deniers will go on is talking about how that number is constantly changing.
Yeah.
Maybe it's because
actually, some of them, you recall that there were people at the insurrection saying that the 6 million wasn't enough. So, maybe they want the number to be higher.
It also couldn't be for the fact that, hey, we've lost count, because there's no guarantee we found all the bodies either.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how many of them were burnt to ash and just buried under the ground? We ain't gonna find that.
Yeah, they turned it.
Right.
Yeah, how many people were turned into fertilizer again?
Yeah, like how many people are fertilizing the tomatoes in Dolores's garden? We don't know. We don't know. We kind of just have to gloss over that one.
Oh yes. Oh yeah, I think Fritz killed about 500 people over there.
You know, for the fact that white nationalists in the U.S. though want to claim that we're constantly censoring them, Germany's actually got a yarn to sell you. You know, they actually keep Auschwitz up and let people visit it and see it and look at it. Why do you think that is?
So that way we don't fucking repeat history like the dumbasses we are.
Well, I'll tell you this as well. Germany, in Germany, it's actually illegal to display the swastika anywhere, but that's coupled with the fact that their education for school they don't try to basically glance over World War II the way we glance over, like the way we treated the Indians, for example. Germany, they talk about World War II and they make it clear in no uncertain terms that yes, we were the bad guys, and yes, we did this terrible thing, and yes, our country was literally split in two for the better part of 50 years because the rest of the world was that pissed off at us.
And here's the thing, even though you want to bitch so much, German education actually has an extraordinarily unique disposition, where the fact that most of the historical books written on the Holocaust in Germany in particular were probably written solely from the perspective or using or quoting or putting together documents and personal anecdotal experiences from people who lived under the Third Reich, by the way. So they probably have the most intimate education about what actually went down with Germany at the time. Because they were personally involved.
Oh god. A little bit of something that's breaking, that is not really news, but just some fucking bullshit if you want.
Breaking shit.
Yeah. Marjorie Taylor Greene. I think you're gonna know where this is gonna
Taylor
go.
Greene.
She tweeted about meeting with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, trying to plan a debate about the Green New Deal. Saying in a tweet, after I finished reading all 14 pages, like we agreed, I'll schedule time for our debate. 14 pages of this?
Okay, no. Let me stop right there. Okay, AOC, on the off chance that somehow, some way you're listening to this program, do not take the debate. Okay, this is a woman who literally believes that Jewish space lasers are starting the California wildfires. Okay, this is a QAnon nut. You have nothing to gain by debating Marjorie Taylor Greene. Do not take the fucking bait.
You're just gonna wind up.
Actually, wait a minute.
You're gonna put her.
I was wondering why there were a bunch of giant dreidels in the sky.
You guys see? Oh, by the way, did you guys see? Did you guys see what I posted in the group chat last night? This I wanted to pick Scarlett on this one, especially because she is the one who got us the whole Jews in space and Mel Brooks. Someone, I imagine this is a very tongue-in-cheek, someone came up with the badge for the secret Jewish space laser corps. With the
By the way,
Mazel Tov.
By the way, did Scarlett ever react to that? Because I want to genuinely know what Scarlett thought about that.
Did not. I have no idea what a reaction is. She never told me what it was.
We should have asked Scarlett while they were here.
Yeah,
Like
well,
she was pretty much pushing the Jews in space clip from what was it?
I said I don't know, she was the one who told us about the Jews in space song, so I imagine
Yeah.
she thought it was humorous, but I don't know. But
Yeah.
anyway,
So,
let's get to something serious now. Let's go ahead and just dive right into the main meat of this podcast here. I'm just going to get into the monologue. I don't
Main meat. Why was Sharpwing talking so much about white nationalists and Nazis and shit? There's a reason for it. You'll see.
So, as you all know, this week we had a pretty significant court case in the state of Minnesota. Derek Chauvin, former police officer who was charged with the murder of George Floyd, was found guilty on all counts. That is second-degree unintentional murder, third-degree unintentional murder, and I think it's third-degree manslaughter. Now, each of these sentences carries with it a penalty of 10, 20, and 40 years in prison, respectively. Now, it should be noted, however, that there's no guarantee that he's going to be serving a 70-year sentence, because in Minnesota, you actually have the choice, as is this case, to serve if you're charged with multiple crimes, you can serve your sentences concurrently rather than sequentially. So what that means is that when he does go to jail, they're all going to be treated basically as one single crime. Okay, so that means whatever sentence he gets, if they're going to go for the maximum sentence of unintentional murder 2, that's 40 years, which essentially would put him in prison for the rest of his life. But also in Minnesota, it's very common for people to be let out on parole after serving about 2/3 of the sentence. Even so, that's like 30 years and the stuff. But anyway, that's for the prosecution ultimately to decide what the sentencing was going to be. As for the actual verdict, a lot of people have a lot of thoughts on the verdict, and Scarlett actually had some thoughts on it as well, and she unfortunately couldn't join us tonight, but she did just send us her statement of the verdict, which I will now read out for you all here.
Yes.
I got something about what led up to the verdict, because Silent Blast wanted me to talk about it, or wanted to be brought up. So go ahead.
Okay, this is good. This is good. I like the audience engagement. Appreciate it, guys.
Okay. So this is Scarlett's statement on the verdict. Like most people, I watched with painful anticipation of the possibility that the jury will somehow acquit Chauvin. I completely expected this, and in turn would have been yet again another failure despite overwhelming evidence, testimony, and even a rare sight of the blue wall cracking before us when Chauvin's former police chief and others virtually damned him. When I heard he was guilty in all 3 counts on the radio, I was sitting out in my car driving home and let out a loud whoop on a stoplight. I would like to add for the record that my reaction was to lean very close to the television set, which had Derek Chauvin on at the point, and I whispered, "Die slow, you sick fuck." But that was me. This is Scarlett's statement. Scarlett says, "Yes, I was jubilant at the news. I felt a great relief to have seen justice was served. I, however, won't deny the fact that for this one instance of justice, there are still thousands of other injustices still need to be corrected when it comes to our relationship with the police, and especially how they treat communities of color and the poor. This is not a time to lay down our swords and rest. George Floyd isn't the end of seeking equal justice for all. It's a rallying cry. This is evidence that our vision works. What we want from our police and of our justice system is in demand, even by the police themselves. Accountability and being community-driven is what we want, and if we demand it, and when the people with power finally realize they aren't so powerless against the culture of racism and classism in our nation, they can join with the people, we can all make things happen." So that's the end of Scarlett's statement. Now, I will pause the monologue here for a second because I want to hear what Silent asked Gonzo to bring up, because I'm curious if it's related to the one thing that I'm going to address in terms of the reaction I've seen from the right wing.
Now, this happened before the verdict. Let me pull up some of the news articles about this, because he was kind of bitching that he was kind of upset about how Maxine Waters got herself involved with this. Okay. Because, hang on, where is that? There we go. Basically, she decided to go to Minneapolis to make her presence known with the demonstrators there, who were also there because of the other incident with the Brooklyn Center PD. And the comment she made probably would have gotten us in deep waters and would have undone all the work that probably went into the trial so far, because she basically, a lot of people ended up cherry picking the comments. She said, saying things to, we got to stay in the streets, demand justice, we're looking for a guilty verdict, and we're going to see if all the talk that took place and has been taking place after they saw what happened to George Floyd, if none of those happened, then we know we've got to not only stay on the street, but we've got to fight for justice.
We have to persist in calling for justice. We have to let people know that we're not going to be satisfied unless we get justice in these cases.
She also continues on saying, we got to stay on the street, we got to get more active, we got to get more confrontational, we got to make sure that they know that we mean business.
What should protesters do?
Well, we got to stay on the street, and we've got to get more active, we've got to get more confrontational, we've got to make sure that they know that we mean business.
Okay. All right. I am now unpausing a monologue and silent. Thank you for bringing that to Gonzo's attention, because that is precisely where I was going with this. So this is one of the instances where everyone's kind of right about something. Okay, so as Gonzo mentioned, Maxine Waters made those comments shortly around the time I believe the closing arguments were being delivered. And it basically is what it sounds like. You know, it's basically we want a guilty verdict and we got to get more active. We got to stay on the streets, calling on protesters to outright be more aggressive, more confrontational. Okay.
That.
And in a related story, President Biden weighed in as well, saying that he hoped that the jury would come to the right verdict and that the evidence was overwhelming.
I'm praying the verdict is the right verdict, which is, I think it's overwhelming in my view.
Neither of these comments were appropriate. Maxine Waters, though, was considerably worse. Because first of all, you don't really want to... This is my personal opinion, first of all. My personal opinion is that when it comes to the criminal justice system, our elected officials should tread very lightly when deciding to weigh in on the case. Or even better, just shut the fuck up and don't say anything at all. Okay? I mean, seriously, if I'm going to sit here and bitch about Donald Trump making his feelings known on various issues and facets that have nothing to do with him, this isn't exactly the same thing going on here, but it's... The idea is that we don't want to create the impression that the justice system is not impartial. Justice is supposed to be impartial. It's supposed to be completely separate from the whims of any politicians. So I understand, and I understand where President Biden's coming from. I mean, he's a decent guy. He obviously wanted to see this done. I mean, I get that, but it was not appropriate for him to say those things. Okay, it's not appropriate for him to say that I hope you come to the right verdict without necessarily specifying what the right verdict is. Maxine Waters' comments, I think, are a bit more irresponsible, not just because of what I just mentioned, how it gives the impression that you're not being impartial, but when you consider that we just over 100 days ago, we had an insurrection at the Capitol building that was egged on in part by comments made by election officials. So you spent an entire month impeaching Donald Trump for the second time, because he incited violence because of his comments. And you're going to go out and you're going to try to do something. I'm not saying that that she was trying to incite a riot. I also will state for the record that I believe that the grievances of Black Lives Matter are considerably more valid than the grievances of the people at the Stop the Steal rally, mainly because one side's grievances are based on reality and provable patterns and occurrences, and the other side's grievances are based on a conspiracy theory. But I digress. My point is, it was very, very irresponsible for the Congresswoman to say those things. And I know that there are also people that are thinking, hey, maybe this means we can declare it a mistrial or get an appeal or get the Supreme Court to overturn.
Absolutely not, because that makes it especially partial.
Yeah, to that I say good luck. You know, good luck with that. I mean, and they want to say... like the refrain you're hearing from people on the right, like Tucker Carlson, for example. I predicted that Tucker on Tuesday night was going to be must-see TV, and I was not wrong. He goes on there, and he has Candace Owens on, because I guess he wants to prove that he's totally not a racist, despite saying that white replacement theory actually has some merit. So, yeah, totally not a racist there, Tucker. Totally not a racist.
Yeah.
But they both argue this new line now that the jury wasn't fair because, oh, well, if they said he wasn't guilty, there was going to be riots and everything, and everyone was going to burn things down. And look, the job of the jury is to be impartial. The job of the jury is to just push all that aside. Now, I would be remiss in pretending that the outcome of the verdict wasn't probably in the back of some people's minds. Like, we would have to be, it would be remiss, it would be silly for us to pretend otherwise. And you could argue that, like, well, maybe they shouldn't have had it in Minnesota. They should have had it somewhere outside of Minnesota where maybe the public outcry wouldn't have been severe. Let's be honest, okay? Considering not just the national attention, but the international attention that this case brought, if they really wanted to avoid any possibility of a riot or anything based on the verdict, it would have had to have been held on the fucking moon. Like, there is not a place on this planet that you could have gone where people weren't going to be there and make their feelings known.
If you'll recall, when George Floyd was first murdered by Derek Chauvin, we can say that now because the courts decided that's what it is.
Yes.
We can say that. It's not defamation of character. The law decided that was murder.
Yes.
And I want to go on.
Go ahead.
You'll recall the riots didn't just happen where the killing took place. The riots happened all over the country. In fact, it's the primary reason the whole controversy with Kyle Rittenhouse happened in the first place.
Yeah, exactly.
Kenosha happened because of what happened to George Floyd.
Yeah, and ultimately this is, and so you can say what you want about the public pressure, everything, but here's ultimately where I fall here, and here's why it's a losing argument. Because at the end of the day, the bottom line is this, okay? Black Lives Matter didn't commit a crime on that hot summer day nearly a year ago. Derek Chauvin did. Maxine Waters didn't kneel on a dude's neck for 9 minutes. Derek Chauvin did. Joe Biden, as hard as this may be for some of you to believe, he didn't kill a man in broad daylight. Derek Chauvin did. I mean, that's about it. That's really all you really have to.
Of
all you gotta say. So
of all the people who were reprehensible, especially everybody from Joe Biden to Waters to Pelosi, who pretty much called George Floyd's death a sacrifice.
So again, thank you, George Floyd, for sacrificing your life for justice.
To the fucking idiot who's owning the Las Vegas Raiders, who said, "Now I can't breathe."
By the way,
the things that were done during the past couple of weeks while the trial was going on, the main fact of the matter is, Derek Chauvin did this and started all this.
Yeah.
By the way, for what it's worth, I guess George Floyd's, I don't know if it's his mom or sister or somebody related to George Floyd, said that they had no problem with Mark Davis's tweet. I think Joe, in a related story, I think this was George Floyd's girlfriend or whoever, but someone made a speech that said something very similar to what Nancy Pelosi said, which is, thank you very much, George, for sacrificing your life. Now, to me, that is a tone. I don't care where that's coming from. That's a tone-deaf statement because it's not like it's not like George Floyd.
Well, if I can take over, right? Because I had a unique way of putting this. The whole reason these riots happened in the first place was because this man did not want to die. The primary reason you find somebody like me on the side of Derek Chauvin rotting in hell, let alone jail, is because I had to sit through quite a few minutes of a man just begging the officer not to die that day. Something that just seems to gloss over absolutely each and every single person who stood there in front of me saying that Floyd was to blame, claiming they watched the body cam footage. I don't believe for one fucking minute in the facet of the type of people I know you guys to be that any of you watched it. And I'm not specifically calling out an audience member here. I'm calling out a friend that had the audacity to say that sort of thing. And I'm going to say it here and now. You're acting a lot like the people you claim to hate. Knock it off.
Yeah, I mean, look, let's not let's not get this twisted, okay? It's not like George Floyd was a soldier jumping on a grenade to save his platoon, okay?
No.
George Floyd did not wake up that day and say to himself, I'm going to go give my life to shine a light on systemic racism and police brutality toward African Americans. Okay, that didn't happen. All right, so as some commentators pointed out, like Stephen A. Smith actually pointed out, George Floyd's dead. He should not. This is a man who there is absolutely no reason for this man to not be alive today. Absolutely no reason at all.
Despite the alleged drugs that was in his system or the heart condition that he was about to subject himself to.
When you ask me, right, if George Floyd is a martyr, he absolutely is, because most martyrs, and this is the sad fact of reality, most martyrs are unwilling.
Yeah, absolutely.
The very definition of a martyr was a death that didn't have to happen. Like, an example to society. A tear in the world's eye is essentially what a martyr is. It was something that absolutely 100% did not have to happen. That's why we learned from it. It was completely preventable.
Yes. It was. Absolutely was. It did not need to happen. But I find the reaction from... So, like I said, I don't want to spend a few time on this because, frankly, spending an entire show dunking on the Tucker Carlsons or Dave Rubins or whatever the world, it's not a productive conversation to have. We can do that literally whenever we want.
Literally, internet blood sports fed you guys that for years, and now you're fat from it. Maybe you want to try a different palate.
But yeah, so but when you have people on the old Twitter, and they're saying things like this is, let me see here, I'm trying to find one here. So we got Sohar Babrami saying, not looking forward to the peaceful protest in Manhattan tonight. Or Matt Walsh saying, the mob, led by Democrats at the highest level, successfully intimidated the jury into getting the result they wanted before the trial started.
This trial lasted for fucking 4 weeks.
Yes, I know. Let's see here. Cheryl Atkinson saying there's only one right verdict, and why even have a trial or a justice system for that matter? JD Vance saying,
do you want anarchy? Like, half of these people just sound like they want anarchy. Because
that's go back to Matt Walsh. Matt Walsh, George Floyd's death will go down as the most consequential drug overdose in history. Get the fuck out of here, Matt Walsh.
Fuck you, Walsh, fucking shithead.
Yes.
That actually kind of pisses me off.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah, as I said, this should happen regardless of George Floyd being on drugs or having a heart condition or whatnot. And if there was, Chauvin just accelerated Floyd's death unnecessarily.
Yes,
that still pins him as a murderer.
And I'm glad you brought that up, Gonzo, because in the state of Minneapolis, if you are found to have, even if, let's say you do something and a guy dies of some totally separate reason, like you're yelling at a guy, you're getting aggressive to him or whatever, and like he later dies of like a heart attack or heart failure, whatever. In the state of Minneapolis, state of Minnesota, if you are found to have committed an action that ultimately led to the death of the victim, you're still liable. Okay, now whether or not that's manslaughter or murder depends on the circumstance. In this case, the jury felt it was enough to justify the murder charge. But ultimately, you simply can't use that little excuse of, I didn't kill him. It was the bullets and the lead poisoning and the bodily trauma that killed him. That wasn't me. In Minnesota, that doesn't fly. Okay, so for all the defense's fantastical posturings of, like, the defense really, I think they knew that they had, like, mountains of evidence, against them. And by the way, I want to make this clear. The initial police report, or the statement put out by the Minneapolis Police Department that mentioned the death of George Floyd, it was incredibly vague. It just said a guy died because of a medical incident after an encounter with police. Said nothing about Derek Chauvin taking a knee on him for 9 fucking minutes. The only reason we know about that is because of a 17-year-old black girl who happened to be there at the time and who recorded the whole excruciating ordeal on her cell phone. If that cell phone video doesn't exist, Derek Chauvin's a free man today. Understand that. So, with that in mind, I find it very appropriate that Attorney General Merrick Garland, who, as I've said, continues to not play around, is now opening a full-scale investigation into the Minneapolis Police Department, because the chief of police go up there, he took the stand, he said, this isn't our training, this is not what we do. Well, DOJ is about to find out whether or not he's full of shit. And I'll be very, very interested to see the results from that investigation.
Yeah, like, I'm always genuinely curious what the training is when this kind of stuff happens. Mm-hmm. And people don't realize it, but most of you who have come out in defense of the police, you were defaulting to that position no matter what, even if you don't think you were. I realized that because I was in your position at one point. I remember challenging one of my friends on the death of Philando Castile, which I
remember that one.
Definitely felt like one that didn't need to happen. If I remember right, that was the one where the officer thought the guy was pulling out his gun, right? That's the one, right?
Yeah, basically. Yeah, well, Philando Castile, that was basically, he told the officer he had a gun. And
I literally felt that one went from 1 to 11 immediately.
Especially
with
that
was the case.
Yeah, especially because this was also the aftermath was live streamed on Facebook because he was with his girlfriend and her young daughter at the time. So that's gonna be a fucking hard thing to defend.
It's actually something that got to me kind of deeply because a long time ago, somebody I used to consider my friend, this person's just contemptible, right? They talk to people in a very vile manner when people disagree with them. They were wrong on a lot of the things they were said. They were complicit with bullshit versus challenging it like I do. So you're not even one of mine. They used to be staff of the original Sharpcast and involved with my original line of content until I fired them, or AKA like straight out kicked them from the Discord group. But I remember there was a point where this person was through a quote-unquote libertarian phase, right? Because most people who are libertarian don't stay libertarian. You're probably familiar with this, Helios, libertarian grifters, as it were.
Oh, well, I won't call... Well, it's like, look, it's like, you know how when you're in college and you read the Communist Manifesto for the first time and all of a sudden you're convinced, like, oh my God, communism totally works, you know? And eventually you graduate, you're like, on the other hand, maybe not. Yeah. That does kind of happen with libertarianism. It happened with me. Like, I'm an interesting case. No, I went from, like, I say before, high school Helios would have voted for Donald Trump, and he would not have lost a wink of sleep over it. College Helios was all about going from that neocon to a more libertarian thing, and it helped that when I was at Michigan, I actually took classes that were about things like urban planning and stuff like that, and which naturally comes into the thing. Like, I still remember, like, one of the things that really kind of opened my eyes to the systemic racism that exists is that I was in my urban planning class and we were doing a study on local businesses. And I read this study that says that if employers get an application from a name that just sounds black, like it sounds like a quote unquote black name, they're more likely to just toss it in the trash. You know, not even call the guy back or get his references or anything, just like into the trash you go.
You see, that's why I like my name.
Yeah, I won't lie. Your name sounds pretty white.
Yeah. Like, oh yes. Hello, my name is Sam.
Yeah, like literally. If you want to be fancy, you have the right to call yourself Samuel, since that's Sam for short.
I was going to say, you call yourself Samuel, people might get a Samuel L. Jackson vibe off you. You might just be hired on the spot just for that.
Samuel L. Jackson is probably the one exception. Samuel L. Jackson is probably the one exception.
The one exception is black people.
Okay, maybe Terrence Crews as well.
Terry Crews.
Okay, black celebrities just get the pass because people like them. Let's be real here.
Like the black celebrities.
Let's be real here. Any
Okay,
company would kill to have a black celebrity on the premise.
I gotta get that hat then. I gotta get that hat.
The beret, the fucking beret.
Yeah, the fucking beret. The glasses. The glasses, the bald head. The bald head. You gotta be bald, too.
Yeah, I mean, I'm okay with shaving my head.
If you want a purple lightsaber, I can make a few calls.
Anyway.
You probably look more like a Black Panther, though, because let's be real, right? When Samuel Jackson is in full getup, that's the vibe you kind of get. He'd have punched a motherfucker.
Black Panther vibe.
Samuel Jackson just gives you that vibe that he'd have punched a motherfucker if he was around during civil rights movement.
He wouldn't have had it with you.
He would have had it with you, yeah, absolutely.
If he didn't,
Can you imagine Samuel L. Jackson down in Selma with Martin Luther King?
Yes.
Yeah, that Martin Luther King is like, I had a dream that little white girls and little black boys would drink in the fountain of prosperity. Yeah, listen to what that motherfucker said. Hell yeah.
I've had it with these.
Hey, stop it with your torches and pitchfork. Listen to that.
I've had it with these racists in this motherfucking era.
There it is. I've had it with these motherfucking racists in this motherfucking country.
Bro, somebody should totally get Samuel Jackson on board with that shit. It'd be so based.
Yeah, seriously. I mean, anyway.
As Martin Luther King's anger.
Oh my god. I'm amazing. I'm amazing that what is it? What is it? Is it the Boondocks? I think that one show that had Martin Luther King on it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Thank you, Puppy, and now in your own wise words, I can't stop. I won't stop. I don't even know how to stop.
I would quote the scene, but I don't want to give Gonzo more work censoring.
Oh yeah,
You already gave me an instance where I gotta fucking censor you.
Only in the Boondocks do you have Dr. Martin Luther King himself taking quotes from rappers.
Yeah, believe me, if you don't know what we're talking about, just Google the Boondocks and YouTube Boondocks and Martin Luther King. You'll find the scene very quick. You'll find the scene.
Aaron McGruger will blow your fucking mind because he does like a really fresh, tasteful, pretty adult, but very enjoyable social commentary on Black America. And like,
oh yeah,
largely that is what his show / comic strip, The Boondocks, is about. Specifically, it's about Black youth.
Yeah. All right. So, but let's bring it back though to the whole idea of the conduct by the police in this sense. Okay. So, you may also have heard on the same day the verdict was read, within an hour, in fact, there was another shooting in Columbus involving a police officer and a African American. This time it was a 16-year-old black girl. And it was the officer in question was responding to a domestic dispute. And it ended up with, the body cam footage was released by Columbus PD last night, and we've all seen it here. And this is, I will say this, I want to choose the words carefully. It's a different situation than what happened with George Floyd, because what happened with George Floyd was excessive. This, however, was more along the lines of police training, because if you look at the video, the victim in question is attacking other people, other black people, I might add, because it's a black household. They're attacking them in the context of the video. And the officer claims that they have a knife out there. I guess she had a kitchen knife or something. I don't know what it is. But just as it looks like she's going to attempt to inflict harm or assault another young black woman, that's when the officer fires 3 shots into her back, and she drops to the ground. And presumably she died later from her injuries. So when I brought this up in another Discord server, people asked me, why did the officer go for his gun? Why did he shoot first? And I explained, well, this is what police officers are trained to do. Because I've done like for years. I did an after school program with my local PD, and it was basically what it sounds like. They taught us, what actually goes into being a police officer and stuff like that. A lot of paperwork, a lot of tedious traffic stops. Although we did once get a visit from a DEA agent who brought his M4 with us, which is pretty cool. Yeah, it actually showed us pictures of like an actual honest to God drug bust. Okay, so for those of you who are old enough to know what Miami Vice is, you know what I'm talking about here. For those of you who don't, if you ever wondered like how in shows like Miami Vice, they always show the cops driving around in these Ferraris and these Armani suits, it's because whenever DEA busts a drug kingpin, anything they find there now belongs to them. So weapons, cars, suits, that is legal. It's completely legal.
That would make you a target,
Vice. He can get money from all these drug lords, and he can get a hold of a Ferrari Testarossa.
That's the thing, though, right? If you, like, drug busted a major cartel, that would make you, like, a fucking target for these crime syndicates, wouldn't it?
Now you know why DEA guys, they're very well protected, and they try to keep their stuff, things on a hush-hush. But anyway, so my point, though, is that when it comes to dealing with aggressive suspects, the default training for cops is that they feel their life's in danger or the lives of other people surrounding them are in danger is take out the firearm, steal on target, center of mass until they stop moving. That's it. Now, and then people go like, well, what about tasers? What about other things? Like
this as well.
Why not do non-lethal? And I agree that we can have that conversation, whether or not, and this is kind of where I wanted to leave this thing, is that ultimately what could happen in the wake of this verdict is that hopefully we could start seeing more reforms with police departments around the country. The person I was discussing this with offered up a solution where I don't know how serious they are, but they were basically like, instead of shooting the chick, why not do a Shane McMahon coast-to-coast missile right into her back? They were proposing to basically replace firearms with WWE moves.
Okay, that's a little bit much.
Okay,
even if we're trying to go for a non-lethal approach, that alone is a bit much.
I'll one-up you. We teach cops the deadliest martial art in Central Asia.
What?
I just don't know what it is. Maybe we teach them capoeira, and not like that fancy dance shit, like the actual deadly art of capoeira.
Capoeira. Get it right.
Capoeira.
Capoeira. And capoeira is it is that dance shit.
But we kind of watered it down and we made it look way weaker than it actually is.
Well, if we get some actual capoeiristas to train the cops, that's going to be interesting.
We got to get some like Brazilian martial artists, guys who actually know capoeira.
Get the capoeiristas in here. Train the police.
That being
to do capoeira.
That being said, if we had the time and resources, I would love to train our police in CQC because it'd be much more interesting if they could break your bones versus kill you.
So I do know...
We're almost at 2025. We gotta make spandex-suited martial arts police a thing.
Ninja. I've trained my whole life to be a ninja that enforces the law.
I've trained my whole life to become a Power Ranger.
Evidently, we'll get a samurai cop out of this shit.
Imagine this comedic scene where there's like a fucking mugging that takes place in an alleyway. All of a sudden, there's like a fucking flash of smoke, and there's just this white guy, in a fucking ninja spandex suit, just running down the wall towards the mugger.
Oh no, it's the police!
I will, guys. Allow me to take you one step further, okay? Building off of my this person's idea to gradually phase out police firearms and replace them with training police to do the tombstone pile driver. What if we just reform our entire justice system? So instead of a trial, we just have the defendant and the prosecuting attorney squaring off in a Hell in a Cell match. And if the prosecutor wins, the defendant goes to jail.
And it looks like Judge Mathis has the upper hand on Derek Chauvin. Oh no, he's got a steel chair, ladies and gentlemen. He's got a steel chair. The long arm of justice shows no mercy. Oh, he's cracked Chauvin's skull. I can see blood.
My God!
It was a hell of a skull match, but I'm pretty sure that the justice system would be even more rigged.
It reminds me of that one thing I think was deep faked, was like the fucking judge that said he would beat a guy's attorney's ass, takes him out in the hallway, and then you just hear, "You want to talk shit?" You start hearing fucking banging around the lockers and shit.
Well, I mean, for what it's worth, Vince did play a judge on one special of Raw, I think it was. I think it was when they fired the guy they brought over from WCW. Vince played a judge. It would have gone as well as you.
It would make shit interesting, but holy shit.
All right, so yeah, back. Okay, so
assuming guilty of getting your ass kicked.
Yeah. So, anyway, so that's obviously not a realistic solution. Although, if there are any members of Congress out there that want to sponsor the Criminal Justice Smackdown Act, if you will, let us know. We will happily promote it on the show.
Ladies and gentlemen, to the first annual 2029 Criminal Justice Smackdown, and it's the fight of the century, ladies and gentlemen. Major mass murderers and justice system officials squaring off in the ring. Who's gonna win?
We got the main event. Main event. We got a tag team match between the Trump Foundation and the Southern District of New York attorneys.
Oh boy.
Oh shit. Ladies and gentlemen, it's the new and improved Johnson & Johnson, and they've been training their whole lives with spine breakers and DDKs.
Oh my God.
You see like a fucking guy with brass knuckles, and it seems like this is a no-holds-barred match, ladies and gentlemen. Like a guy with...
He just like he has a singlet that has just no tears written on it.
Just like a guy with the brass knuckles is just like, here's my card, call my law firm sometime.
He rips off his suit. He has a singlet that reads no tears.
Just a fucking like lawyer that's ripped like Senator Armstrong walking down the aisle.
Yes, ripped lawyer. Listen, we need more buff lawyers in our lives.
I do remember the fact that back in the WWE era, when it was still the WWF era, that there was a guy who's literally named IRS and basically looked like an accountant.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to fuck with that. There's no more terrifying wrestler name to me than IRS.
Literally,
time to get fucked over for your tax fraud.
A fucking Joker doesn't want to fuck with the IRS, and that's like the craziest man in the fictional universe.
All right, no.
So
I forgot to pay my taxes. God damn it!
All right.
I'm gonna
that's
down on you.
All right. So anyway, our suggestion of turning the criminal justice and professional wrestling aside. The obvious hope here, and Noscala touched on this in her statement, is that this shouldn't be treated as like the end point of Black Lives Matter. Okay, the end point of Black Lives Matter isn't to see Derek Chauvin go to jail. Okay, the end point of Black Lives Matter is to ensure that this stuff just stops happening altogether, right?
It's a tall glass to fill. It's essentially a movement that may never end, and it shouldn't.
Yeah, exactly. And so, sorry, I'm getting distracted by something on Second Life here. In response to there were initiatives made in response to the initial incident with George Floyd. I mean, here in Michigan, for example, Lansing passed bills that banned chokeholds. Chokeholds were also banned at a federal level. And then you have police departments undergoing racial bias training. As I mentioned, the Department of Justice is going to investigate the Minneapolis Police Department to see if there is any kind of evidence of systemic racial bias there. So one thing that I've heard be suggested from the right-wing side of the equation, at least when I say right-wing, I mean the people like the Lincoln Project, groups that haven't gone completely like fucking full-on Trumpist and, nuts. To reduce the power of the police unions. And a big reason, and Scarlett kind of alluded to this in her statement, is that when she talks about the blue wall, she talks about the fact that you have things like qualified immunity, like very powerful police unions that can not necessarily preclude the any chance for police being held accountable for their actions, but can make it very, very difficult to do in this. And of course, you can have certain reactions to that, like that. Like, for example, like I mentioned Tucker Carlson, just being must-see television last night. Last night claiming he's on and he's basically whining and crying about things. Like, you've all probably seen the clip now of Tucker having a former police officer from New York City on the program.
He literally shut that guy down because he mildly suggested, like as mildly as you could get, mildly suggested that Chauvin was out of line.
Yeah, and just fucking laughed it off like he was fucking crazy.
As literally humored Tucker Carlson and licked his toes to all fucking get out, whispered as quietly as a mouse that what Chauvin did was inappropriate, and that was enough to set Carlson off.
Okay, and by the way, that clip again, and the person who was talking into this, let's make it clear, this is a guy who was a former New York City corrections official named Ed Gavin, who pretty much just made Tucker just have a fucking laughing meltdown. Like,
it was like
a Joker laugh. It was literally a Joker laugh.
The man, the other guy's objection was as fucking milquetoast as you could get, as middle of the road as you can get. And that wasn't enough to satisfy Tucker. Nope.
The scene. I just think that it was excessive and it shouldn't happen. And what I'd like to say...
The guy who did it looks like he's going to spend the rest of his life in prison. So I'm kind of more worried about the rest of the country, which, thanks to police inaction, in case you haven't noticed, is like boarded up. So that's more my concern. But I appreciate you coming on. Ed Gavin, thank you. Nope, done. Thank you.
Also, actually, 1 second, guys. I got to take a look into something here. Okay, this is coming across my Twitter feed now. This occurred about an hour ago. There have been reports of a series of explosions in southern Israel, in central Israel and Jerusalem. They appear to be from the explosions appear to be caused by the Patriot anti-missile batteries being fired at a missile, one or more missiles. I don't know how many, but it looks like there's a missile attack here. I don't know anything else about that. I don't know if this is Hezbollah. I don't know if this is Iran or something, but that's going on right now. And if that develops, I will let you all know. But anyway, to get back to the issue at hand here. So keep in mind that Janine Pirro, or as we call her around here, Judge Wino, because every time she's on the program, she looks drunk as fuck. Even she acknowledged that this was the right verdict, that the evidence was conclusive. Yeah, the evidence was conclusive. Greg, I think it was Greg Gutfield on Fox as well. He said that, hey, I'm glad this was the verdict because, we needed this as a country to heal. And all of us, and all the Fox News hosts just sounded so disappointed when they heard that. Like,
a lot of them did because, hey, look, anarchy perpetrated by Black Lives Matter. That'll get us some fucking ratings. That'll get us people to vote back in Donald Trump and the GOP. That will surely stop the whole defunding the police bullshit. And that way we will perpetuate the more fear machine that scares white people into voting our party in and shit.
Yeah, by the way, that's literally what it is, Gonzo. That's exactly what the mindset is.
And we were thinking Maxine Waters was wanting fucking blood. Look at fucking Fox News.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And there is something that's interesting because all is not well under the base of Fox because something I've started to notice, right? Mm-hmm. If you just isolated yourself to Tucker Carlson or Sean Hannity or Fox and Friends, right?
Yeah.
You would think the whole network is delusional.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
When you go on to things, though, like Fox Business or you go on to other lesser-known Fox television channels like the Fox local news section on Fox 19, for example, it's a completely different experience than what you get from, say, the Tucker Carlson show. Let's just call it that.
Well, I'll tell you this. Okay, so Fox Business is where they put you if you're too crazy for Fox News. Okay, that's where Lou Dobbs, or as I call him, Baghdad Dobbs, ended up going. And even after he had like the My Pillow guy one, I don't even know if he has a show there anymore because I guess he got too crazy for those guys. But also, it's worth noting that the local Fox affiliates have nothing to do with whatever's going on in New York, okay, with Fox News, okay? They have nothing to do with that. But to your point, Sharp, to your point, this has been a notable pattern on the network for some time now, in the sense that, if you watch, Tucker or Hannity or, Frau Ingraham or Fox and Friends, then it looks like these guys are nuts. But they did have like actual people there that did try to be serious at reporting the news. For example, Shep Smith, who was basically there until I think
he decided to
Bill
leave.
Barr my theory is that Bill Barr told Rupert Murdoch to tell him to piss off.
Yeah, but he's now on, I believe, CNBC now.
CNBC, he's on CNBC. Our guy Chris Wallace is still there, and he's like the one legit journo they have left.
It's really interesting. It's like Chris Wallace has stood tantamount opposed to most of the Fox News rhetoric, and that guy still works there. That's what surprises me.
I'm kind of still amazed they haven't gotten rid of him yet. But
Wallace is like our guy. I've stanned Wallace before, and that was off the back end when people were chastising him for getting on Biden's ass when most of the interruptions were coming from Trump blatantly.
I remember that, But you remember the election is that Fox News was the first network to call Arizona for Joe Biden, which, basically killed the Team Trump strategy of, hey, we'll just keep it close and then call it stolen and maybe that'll work out. And they were so stunned by that it got to the point where you had the White House calling Rupert Murdoch himself, begging him to reverse the call. And Fox's decision desk was like, nope, we're keeping it. What happens after the election? They fire their decision desk. They fire most of their legit journalists, with the exception of Chris Wallace, and they hire more opinion people because they see that they're losing viewers to networks like Newsmax or OAN, and so they're trying to get them back. And that's why you now have Tucker Carlson openly talking about the white replacement theory on his program.
By the way, if we ever could, I doubt it, but I need to point this out as a huge fucking tumor on our country.
Mm-hmm.
Ratings-based news and dissemination of information has destroyed our very way of life.
Oh, absolutely.
It needs to go, and if it never does, there will always be a hole in this country that can't be filled.
Yes.
It needs to be, I don't care. It needs to be regulated out. Libertarians can suck my dick on this one. Information does not need to be a tool for marketing.
I mean, sadly, as much as it even pains me to say this, there is some truth to whenever Trump talks about fake news. That, yes, unfortunately, our news sources are leaning towards making it entertaining or scary than to try to inform us. And even sounding condescending while doing it.
Oh, yeah, there's no question about that. It really is.
Yeah, it pained me to even say that, too.
Like, if it ever could be done, shit like Fox News just needs to be regulated out. But I could never see it being done, because the thing that's so inherently busted is ratings-based media essentially gets to use the freedom of press defenses, even though we all fucking know they're just doing this shit for ratings. We all know they are not legitimate journalism. We all know that they don't care about the core tenets of journalism. We all know that they don't care about any of this. And I'm not just talking about Fox News. When you go on television, 9 times out of 10, the major media networks being talked about, the ones that people partially acknowledge, are so incredibly partial in their rhetoric that they do the country a disservice.
Mm-hmm.
They don't,
because
they don't report the facts. What they report is their facts.
There was a opinion in the Washington Post that was about how Fox covered this whole thing. It was written by Eric Wempel. He's a media critic there over the Washington Post, and there's a couple of lines in here that I think really kind of summarize this whole thing. To viewers of Tucker Carlson tonight, accordingly, or let me say this here. Yeah. Actually, you know what? Let me see how long this thing is. I might just read the whole. I'm gonna read the whole fucking opinion piece, because Washington Post is paywalled, and this is a pretty good opinion. I think that kind of it's a lot of basis about what we're talking about here.
It's a pain in the ass to deal with a paywall.
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and read. Yeah, I'm subscribed to it though, because democracy dies in darkness otherwise. So thank you, Washington Post. But yeah, this is the opinion by Eric Wempel in the Washington Post about Tucker's response to the Chauvin verdict. After the conviction of former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin, Fox News contributor and former Congressman Trey Gowdy called the verdict a celebration of our justice system. Similar sentiments dominated coverage on the other major cable channels and beyond, as the Post's Jeremy Barr reported, and for good reason. The case rested on clear video evidence that Chauvin, who was convicted of second-degree unintentional murder, third-degree murder, and second-degree manslaughter after more than 10 hours of jury deliberations, knelt on the neck of George Floyd for more than 9 minutes last July. Sorry about that. Leave it to Fox News host Tucker Carlson to skip past the evidence in search of some way to place an asterisk on this moment of racial justice. On Tuesday evening, the host said, quote, "The jury in the Derek Chauvin trial came to a unanimous and unequivocal verdict this afternoon. Please don't hurt us," unquote. What did that mean? As best as we can surmise, Carlson was suggesting that a motivation behind the verdict was to head off the protests that would likely have erupted after an acquittal. Carlson continued, "The jury spoke for many in this country. Everyone understood perfectly well the consequences of an acquittal in this case. After nearly a year of burning and looting and murder by the Black Lives Matter movement, that was never in doubt. In fact, the overwhelming majority of racial justice protests have been peaceful." Carlson further attempted to undercut the verdict by bashing President Biden, who had stated Tuesday that the evidence against Chauvin was overwhelming. "I wouldn't say that unless the jury was sequestered," said the president. Carlson couldn't fathom him. When was the last time a sitting president weighed in on a jury decision before it was made? Answer, never. Wrong. As my colleague Karen Tumulty noted in 2018, President Donald Trump opined on the trial of Paul Manafort as the jury was in deliberations. Trump said, "I think it's very sad what they've done to Paul Manafort." And then there was President Richard M. Nixon's midstream verdict on the Charles Manson trial in 1970. This mini-episode epitomizes the luxury of being Carlson. He can spend 4 years overlooking the aberrant behavior of Trump. Then he can turn around and hammer Trump's successor for doing some of the same stuff, and his audience will love him for it. The more Carlson strained to provide an alternative take on the Chauvin verdict, the more he stumbled. To shed light on the impact of the verdict of the police, he interviewed Ed Gavin, former New York City deputy sheriff and corrections officer. Carlson asked, "Who's going to become a cop going forward, do you think?" Clearly expecting a grievance about how people won't enter the profession if they're actually second guessed. But Gavin wasn't having it, saying, "Well, I think people will still become police officers. This really is a learning experience for everyone. Let's face it, what we saw in that video was pure savagery." Tension overtook the interview when Gavin started to suggest reforms. Carlson cut him off, saying, "How about enforce the law? Do we need to do that? So hold on, wait a second. So wait, slow down. Do we enforce? Like, let's say people are going through the windows in Macy's and a cop's just standing there. Do they resign?" As Carlson was concluding the discussion, Gavin tried to get on one more point. "Nope, done," scolded Carlson. And again, all this can be seen in the clip that Gonzo was included in the video here.
By the way, the same bastard, and I'm going to say he's a bastard now because I really don't like the Carlson in that. Remember, he constantly claims he's the victim and being taken out of context and being smeared by everybody else.
Yeah.
He won't even let his guest get a word in edgewise because the motherfucker won't say what he wants him to say. It was right there. It was right there in front of all of you who even bothered for a second to watch Fox News. It was right there in front of all of you. Yet I feel that more people that are really riding that Trump train are just going to look for an excuse time and time again to stand up and stick up for a coward. Which I also find fundamentally hilarious because the ideological bounds are so twisted and divided on its laurels that there are even true believers now who say that Fox News is pathetic.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
So all of Tucker Carlson's whinging and hand-wringing and childish banter really leads me to fundamentally wonder who it is he's trying to appeal to, or if the blatant reality is he's just been given ratings-based freedom and free reign to try and tatter his bruised ego.
Probably. Anyway, so the column continues. The host's reaction to the verdict was predictable, given how Carlson covered the Floyd murder last year. As this blog pointed out at that time, Carlson's initial reports focused not on what happened to Floyd, but on protests that spun out of control. 2 nights after Floyd's death, Carlson said, "We'll have the latest on those riots in Minneapolis." And yes, they were in fact riots, no matter what they're telling you on the other channels. That's a fact, and we have the tape. For weeks, Carlson wouldn't show the video of Floyd's murder that had circulated widely on other networks. To viewers of Tucker Carlson tonight, accordingly, the George Floyd story is one of civil unrest, fires, and broken windows. And when someone comes on the air and dares to explain the atrocity, well, that person needs to be cut off and shut down. That's because the truth of the Floyd murder threatens the fragile white grievance ecosystem that Carlson has fashioned on Fox News' airwaves. It speaks to the systemic racism that Carlson so commonly mocks. So desperate was Carlson to exonerate the system of Floyd's death that he claimed that Floyd had died of a drug overdose. The Chauvin jury repudiated that nonsense. No wonder that Carlson doesn't want to talk about it. And that's the end of the opinion. So, again, I can't actually speak of the devil. The Lincoln Project just posted a clip of Tucker doing another Joker laugh on tonight's show.
Oh, God. The timing.
You're being replaced, and there's nothing you can do about it. So shut up!
If they can edit like face paint and like red and shit on him and give him green hair and shit.
All right, I'm gonna paste it.
They really should think about casting Tucker Carlson as the Joker when he does finally lose his job in media for saying something.
Here, I'm pasting the Lincoln Project. I'm pasting the Lincoln Project tweet now.
I forget what the program is called, but there is a program that change that is you can apply sort of, usually it's painterly effects onto actual video footage by painting over a frame and having it extrapolate over. So that could be done, yes. The Joker face paint could be put over him.
You know what? I gotta say this, because I gotta make it blatantly fucking clear, and maybe I'm trying to speak the mind of something more chill progressives in our society think.
Yep.
But fuck you, Tucker Carlson, for trying to speak for all white people. Acting like we think that the demographics naturally shifting is us being replaced. We all think that, right? We all apparently think that people like Ren here are just coming to take our jobs, right?
Mm-hmm.
As he is, the byproduct of about 2 different types of people here that come, I would assume, from the immigration sphere, but
one from slavery, one from immigration.
It bothers me, right? Watching Tucker Carlson, it's like, what pisses me off, right, is how ratings-based media addresses their audience, right? They tell you what you think. They tell you what you feel. So when I watch Tucker Carlson and I don't agree with him, it hits much harder because he's telling me that I think one of my closest friends is going to replace me, put me in a concentration, a concentration camp, I guess. I don't know how crazy this man thinks I am, but he thinks I'm a real fucking nutcase by half the shit he says.
I don't have that many white people in my labor basement, okay?
If your labor basement provides benefits, I'll stay there any day, bud. Simp.
Look, Tucker Carlson, this is a guy who has a family fortune, is literally based off of frozen frozen fish dinners. Tucker Carlson perfectly embodies what I say when I talk about people who say who fly the "Don't Tread on Me" flag, despite having never been tread on in their lives. Tucker Carlson's a poster boy for that. Although, as we found out today, and this is
that man can probably get rare olive oils and truffles in his salad whenever he wants them.
Oh, he absolutely could.
That's how rich I think Tucker Carlson is.
I told you that he has his own private island. Like, this is a guy who tries to make himself like the hero of the working class and the forgotten Americans. He's got his own fucking private island. Okay.
Oh yeah, I remember when the government came and took my private island. Grr.
Yeah.
Listen here, I'm here to defend all you working class men. Did you undercook my filet mignon?
You little peon.
Yeah. But no. So, as we found out today, apparently, so someone got a hold of a college yearbook that apparently has Tucker Carlson in it. This is a picture of a guy that looks a hell of a lot like Tucker. In fact, I'm pretty sure it's actually it's based on, it is one picture. It's a black and white photo, but he is wearing a ridiculous bow tie that he did once wear when he appeared, I think, on, it was like I don't know if it was like Larry King show or something, but like when the first time Tucker ever appeared on television anywhere, he was wearing this ridiculous bow tie, and I'm pretty sure it was the same one. But anyway, this lists a dude in the yearbook named Tucker S.M. Carlson, which I'm pretty sure that's his full name. Let me take a look at that, because I know he's got like 4 names.
We're doxing him, gents. Now.
Oh, good. No. Tucker.
We're saying his publicly available name to the public.
Yeah, his full name is Tucker Swanson McNear Carlson.
Shit,
wouldn't that be Tucker and SMCN Carlson?
I am genuinely curious. His full name is available to the public without people having to dig for it, right?
It's on Wikipedia.
It's on Wikipedia.
Yeah,
Look at
Wikipedia.
Tucker Swanson McNear.
Unless Wikipedia is some secret doxing chain we don't know about, and I'm waiting for a certain someone to come around and say it is. But
look, we can't really rely on that too much because, I might as well bring this up now. Yesterday, when Ted Nugent was diagnosed with COVID, editors were trying to put in for about a good half hour or so that Ted Nugent would just straight up die yesterday. And as of this recording, he's still alive.
Yes, he's not dead yet.
They removed that edit.
So there are just people, I guess, hoping that Ted Nugent dies.
Yeah. And somehow learning of fucking Tucker Carlson's full name. So.
Yeah. Anyway, but so if this is in fact Tucker's college yearbook, it lists him as being he lists himself, I guess, as being a member of the Dan White Society. What the Dan White Society is, I have no idea. But Dan White was the name of the man who murdered Harvey Milk.
Yeah, Harvey Milk was the, I believe, one of the earliest openly gay politicians.
It might have been the first.
I'm aware of Harvey Milk.
Yeah, they got a fucking movie about that shit.
Yeah, he was the first openly gay elected official in the history of California.
All I'm just thinking is the Dan what was it Foundation?
The Dan White Foundation.
Yeah, the Dan White. All I'm thinking of the Dan White Foundation is just a bunch of white guys named Dan, just having a tea time together, talking about, hey, you know how we murdered those gay guys?
You know what I find? Do you know what I find fundamentally strange? This whole white replacement thing. There was a point, right, where I'd taken that red pill and I genuinely believed half of this shit. Like minorities just hated my guts and didn't want to talk to me and just hated me because I was white and wanted to destroy my life and take away everything I'd worked for. There was points I genuinely believed that, right?
Yeah.
Do you know what changed?
What?
I talked to black people.
And you realize they had no interest in doing that.
I'm not even kidding. Like, the primary interest my friends have in doing is shit posting, having a good time, and talking about guns. What's really funny is half the black people I know are pro-gun.
Yeah. Of course, a lot of black people are pro-gun.
Damn, and you know where I figured out about the racial history of gun control? Super Duper Hooper Trooper.
Yeah.
He's in the Army.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, gun control got a huge racial history.
And the man placed some Wallace wisdom on my ass. Obviously, his name's not Wallace. That's actually an inside joke from something I watch. But people will know it if they hear it. But he imparted some Wallace wisdom on my white ass.
Mm-hmm.
Gun control is largely a racial issue to this day, and most people don't want to talk about it.
Oh, yeah. It's a very tough conversation to have. Like, even when we just...
Hey, listen, if if the OKKO episode with the skeleton remotes started talking about how the black characters couldn't get the skeleton remotes, things would get even more heavy. Okay,
that would have been a pretty ballsy episode. I gotta admit, OKKO would have had more nuts on it than I pegged it for. Which don't get me wrong, there are some points where some of these cartoons had fucking cojones. Nuts, my man.
I mean,
nuts.
they made what I'm saying is OKKO had a gun control episode, but it didn't go into the racial aspect.
Yeah, I wish it had. I wish even one child's programming had the balls to go into the racial aspect of gun control, because that definitely deserves some attention.
Oh, it absolutely does. I think it does.
The idea, the possibility that being pro-gun could be a left-wing thing is the big irony here, because guess who prospers in racial issues so far? The left.
Well, absolutely. We talk about the culture war a lot here. Okay, so what we have to understand is that Democrats, especially, need to keep this in mind going forward for 2022. The GOP has gotten very good at winning many, many battles in the culture war, but they've lost some pretty big battles recently. They lost the fight on gay marriage. They lost the fight on marijuana. They fought abortion to a draw, in the sense that we're going to allow abortion, but we're going to have all these qualms and hand-wringing about it.
And at this point, we're kind of realizing that the fights they're picking are on the losing side of history, and more of the I hate America camp than the I love America camp. Because, let's be honest, if we're being real right now, the big, bulking, two-parent, white households is slowly an idea that's falling apart. In fact, it is slowly becoming known that more and more of the white demographic in the United States, especially in particular states that even Bill Maher addressed, the voter base is mostly white virgin males.
Well, yeah, I mean, look.
Bachelors.
So the world is changing. Okay, so we talk about white grievance politics here. It's not entirely in a mocking matter. There are legitimate grievances to be had out there, okay? The idea where you could go to a job, work there for 30 years or so, and then walk out with a pension and the gold watch doesn't exist anymore.
No.
Okay, it was a different world now. We live in a very different world than we did like 30, 40 years ago. So you have people that are losing their jobs and everything like that. And what you're seeing from these folks on the right, whether it's Tucker Carlson, whether it's Donald Trump, whether it's, Steve Bannon or whoever, it's always like, it's because of BLM. It's because of Antifa. It's because of this other group that is coming here to destroy you and destroy your lives. And that's the message that they send out on Fox News. So it's like when they talk about George Floyd.
To be frank, though, and I will be a little critical here, these groups didn't really do a good job in saying they didn't hate them or didn't want to hurt them. In fact, half the time they seem to allow people to take the soapbox that definitely want to do that and should be committed.
Yeah, and that's why I always say, don't rely on Twitter for like an accurate depiction of this country's political standings, because
fuck social media. Take a break from it. This is even healthy advice from the co-founder of Stank Fox. He advises you take a break from social media and exercise more. In fact, there's a whole image he shared with me about healthy social media habits and using social media as more of a tool than a lifestyle.
Just remember, there are only one fifth of Americans are on Twitter. That's it. Yeah. So when you look on Twitter, you're only seeing the loudest 20% of the country.
You're essentially seeing the people online that if you went and told your coworkers, "Hey, could you tell this guy to shut up?" They probably would.
Most of the time.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But if I may, but here's the thing. Okay, so as I said, if you are one of these folks, who are already have been kind of spring-loaded to feel like you're getting the short end of the stack, because when you were growing up, your dad could, go to work at, say, I don't know, a garage and have enough money to feed you and your family and so on and so forth. And now that doesn't happen anymore. And you're spring-loaded to feel like you're getting the short end of the stick, but the world you once knew is gone. And so you look at Fox News and you see all these people that are angry in the streets about the death of this person. And, Tucker Carlson says, well, it's because it's all part of their plot to destroy your lives. Here's what you should ask yourselves, okay? You see, we're saying that this could have been a fair trial because you had so many people out there that would have been angry if Derek Chauvin was acquitted. Ask yourself this. Why would they have been angry? Is it because they're, to quote Candace Owen, Marxists that are trying to destroy the American way of life? Or maybe is it because they have seen this exact kind of thing play out again and again and again?
You're going to tell me
lives.
You're going to tell me born-bred Georgians are Marxists that want to bring about the communist revolution?
I mean,
Georgians. We're talking Steve Harvey, Family Feud, Georgians.
I guess as long as they're black, that seems to be the message that Fox wants to send.
Fucking idiots. This is why I don't like these ideas. It's just fucking stupid when you dissect it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Like, once you, apply any kind of, critical thought to it or, anything beyond, your basic emotional impulses or whatever.
Georgians.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I mean, it's the same Reddit that we saw with Stop the Steal. They tried to cancel the votes from those states where you had predominantly urban cities going divided. And of course, when they say, well, we're suspicious of states that, whatever they say inner city, 9 times out of 10, that's code word for black people. So they're basically saying, we believe these votes are suspect, not just because they're for Joe Biden, but because they're from black people. And because of that, we got to throw them out and make the guy who lost the dictator for life. Don't forget,
this guy, the black people voting for Joe Biden, it's not good. Not good.
It's not good.
Yeah. And don't forget, that insurrection was just over 100 days ago. Okay, this isn't ancient history. This just happened, all right? And already Fox is trying to rewrite history. I think the other day,
by the way, it must really scare people when they find out that the liberal and black voting bloc is way more massive than the.
Oh yeah, why do you think they flipped out over Georgia flipping, and now they're getting worried? You're getting nervous about Texas because, I mean, if Georgia can go blue, then frankly, you're looking at quite a few states down south that can go blue. But
it's actually funny when people say, "Oh, signing a piece of paper won't do much for me," and then look what signing a piece of paper did.
Exactly.
You almost destroyed this country by signing a piece of paper.
Or that's what
Trust us, the pen is mightier than the sword.
Well, okay. I will admit, it was like a chain of reactions. You got to admit, that's pretty fucking powerful. that apparently that little piece of paper you filled a bubble in for was powerful enough to make people want to charge into the White House, the Capitol. All that.
And now you got Tucker Carlson saying, talking about how all the insurrectionists are in jail, and Tucker's wanting, well, nobody in Congress is standing up for them. Well, gee, Tucker, maybe it's because the people at the Capitol on January 6th wanted to kill the members of the Congress.
Minus
that might have something to do with it.
Minus the people who just sat outside in the lawn drinking Gatorade, but we're just going to pretend like they weren't there. Largely because they shouldn't have been.
We're going to talk about the people that actually went inside the building,
But those probably aren't the people on trial, and if they are, you'll have to give me an example. Oh, I can't.
They're not the people. By and large, they are not the people that are currently in jail. It's the people
they're probably also not the people on the no-fly list.
Yeah, but again, seriously, I mean, if you see, again, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that if Derek Chauvin walked, there was going to be some kind of reaction. I can't promise you that they were going to burn Minneapolis to the ground or, try to hunt down the jury and kill them. I can't promise you any of that because I don't know. Okay, because that's not our timeline. That's the alternate bad timeline. No. And thankfully we're off that now, and we're going back to the good one. But the point is, again, ask yourself.
Timus Primus.
Yes. The point is, again, ask yourself why these people are so mad. And then once you do that, maybe you say, maybe having a police officer by a white mass shooter who specifically committed a hate crime, McDonald's, after arresting him, and another police officer choking a guy to death for having a fake $20 bill, maybe that's a sign that there's something amiss here, that there's something that we need to fix.
Also, it's kind of silly, because I started to realize this, right? Person mad, maybe try make happy?
Yeah, maybe.
No, caveman.
Within reason. Within reason, mind you. Like, if the person that's mad is not being reasonable, because I tell you right now,
if they're calling me fucking F slurs, or they're the comments I have seen in this.
Yeah, because Donald Trump is still pretty mad that he lost the election. I don't think we should be trying to make him happy at all. That's just me. But anyway, however, there is one more angle of this I want to explore, and because I think we're getting pretty close to the time limit here. So before we do sign off, there is one more angle I wanted to explore, and it kind of addresses my discussion about the training of the police and how what could we do to decrease the likelihood of this happening in the future that doesn't involve anything that would have to deal with race or whatever.
Oh yeah.
There is a movie that I love that few of you have probably seen, but you all probably know of. It's called A Few Good Men. And in the climatic scene where you got Tom Cruise and Jack Nicholson, and Tom Cruise is Jack Nicholson on the stand, and Tom Cruise says, "I want the truth," and Jack Nicholson says, "You can't handle the truth." It's a big moment. But the reason it's big is because of what follows. And for those of you, in case you were living under a rock and you don't know what this is, A Few Good Men is a military courtroom drama, and it's about a Navy lawyer who is assigned to be the defense counsel for two Marines that are accused of killing their squad mate Santiago through a botched training procedure called a Code Red. And the job of Tom Cruise's character is to prove that these two Marines were actually ordered to do it by their colonel, Nathan R. Jessup, who's Jack Nicholson's character. So this is the climatic moment where Caffey is trying to get Jessup to admit that, yes, he ordered the Code Red, and he ultimately bears responsibility for the death of Santiago. And what Jessup says after "you can't handle the truth" is this. He says, "We live in a world that has walls, and those walls have to be defended by men with guns. Who's going to do it? You? I have a greater responsibility you could possibly fathom. You weep for Santiago, and you curse the Marines because you have that luxury, the luxury of the blind. The luxury of not knowing what I know, that Santiago's death, while tragic, probably saved lives. And my existence, while grotesque and incomprehensible to you, saves lives. You don't want that truth because deep down in places that you don't talk about at parties, you want me on that wall. You need me on that wall. We use words like honor, code, loyalty. We use them as a backbone of a life spent defending something. You use them as a punchline. Well, I have neither the time nor inclination to explain myself to a man who rises and sleeps under the blanket of the very freedom that I provide and then questions the manner in which I provide it. I would rather you just said thank you and went on your way. Otherwise, I suggest you pick up a weapon and stand a post. Either way, I don't give a damn what you think you're entitled to. So the crux of the argument, basically, is that Jessup thinks he did the right thing because in the mind of Jessup, he's trying to protect this country. He's trying to defend his nation. And keep in mind, for context, he's stationed at Gitmo. He's stationed at Guantanamo Bay. He is, in his own words, eating breakfast 1,000 yards away from all these Cubans that are being trained to kill him. So in the mind of Jessup, he has license to do whatever it is he can do to keep his country safe. And if that means that a Marine dies because of a bullshit training exercise that is very, very much illegal, so be it. And I bring this up because I wonder how many people that work for our government at all levels have that same mentality, ranging from beat cops to your local PD to line grunt soldiers over in Afghanistan, all the way up to the top brass of the DOD. Like we haven't really, we mentioned this in the opening crosstalk because that's why I brought it up here. The shooting that just occurred in Columbus. That officer, when he fired that gun and took down that 16-year-old black girl, I'm willing to bet that he did that not necessarily because he's a racist, but because he felt that this is what he had to do to save a life, whether his life, the life of somebody else there, or someone else's life. The shootings that we just had over the course of the past couple of weeks, where you had cops taking down two unarmed black people. One of them, I believe one of them was in Austin, and the other was in Chicago. And in the case of Chicago, 13-year-old boy. In the cases of both those officers, did they feel that they were saving lives by shooting someone? So this is what I'm trying to get to here is, what do you do about that when people have that mentality? Like, even if you go out and you are able to somehow, some way get rid of anyone that has a racist bone in their body, to bring in a police department that is completely colorblind or tolerant or whatever buzzword you want to use, and would in no way ever discriminate someone based on race. How do you change a mindset that says they have a license to kill people potentially because they feel that's what they need to do to save lives?
That's a tough question to ask, and it's a question we don't ask that often. We look for easy answers in the situation of, oh, he just simply shouldn't have done it. But that doesn't fill the void of the question you just posed. If anything, it leaves people hungrier for answers.
Yes. I mean, so when I talk about training, I don't just mean like procedures. I don't just mean saying like, pull out your taser first and the firearm second, okay? It's about getting people to adopt a non-combative mindset. It's about getting people out of the mindset that the only thing they can do in that moment to save lives is to take a life.
Which in that situation is very damning that the officer felt that way, especially in a situation that very well could have been lethal. It's going to be really difficult to convince somebody off that high horse.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like, I mean, and look, you want to talk about what happened in, Texas or Columbus, and you want to say in that instance, you had there was reasonable danger and lethal force was justified. We can have that conversation. The Chicago shooting, this was a 13-year-old kid who, yes, was running from the cops. But yes, he stopped, he put his hands up and was turning around, and instantly the cop shot him. Now, it is worth noting that afterwards, the cop in question appeared, from my understanding, from reports that I've read, was incredibly distraught about the fact. So,
yeah, he just killed a kid for Christ's
yeah, to me, again, so to me, that's that training kicking in. So that's the other part of this question. Is this a mindset, where you have to take a life to save a life? Is that something that these people are born with, are bred with? or is it trained into them?
This is genuinely because I'm curious about the level of humanity these people feel when the moment has fleeted.
Mm-hmm.
What was the officer's reaction after shooting a 13-year-old kid?
From my
to what degree of grief did it feel like he felt?
Like, from my understanding, again, this is based off of one report I've read. I have no idea how valid this is, how true it is. But I guess, like, after it was all said and done, while they were taking the kid out and trying to see him, he was, like, just sitting on, like, the curb on the side of the road. You know, he just looked completely... It sounded like he was just in shock, and you had people there trying to comfort him and console him. Like, it sounds to me that it's kind of like how the woman who shot the guy in Texas immediately said, "Oh my God, I can't believe I just shot him." It sounds to me like, at the very least, they recognized they had done something terrible had happened, that they had done something that not necessarily wrong, but something terrible.
That's really important to point out, because something that we don't address with our justice system too often is the humanity.
Mm-hmm.
The reason we wanted to punish Chauvin, I think, genuinely, isn't just because of what he did, but because there was no remorse for what he had done.
Not.
None.
There was a complete... I mean, when you...
None. He killed a man, and it was like opening a can of soup for him.
Absolutely. I mean, you are kneeling on a guy who is telling you he can't breathe, who is crying out for his mother, for God's sake.
Yeah, that's not a man. That's not a man in another life that would protect you. That's probably a man that would gut you and eat you.
I mean, that's a moment where it's like, you know, I think that's the reason why people want this sentencing. There is a reason why there's a lot of people, myself included, who hopes that Derek Chauvin spends the rest of his life in prison. Because in his murder of George Floyd, whether or not he displayed any overt racism depends on the eye of the beholder, depends on what your feelings about it are. What we can all agree is undisputable is that in that moment, he displayed a complete and utter lack of empathy and lack of humanity.
You know, and that's the thing, right? That's the scarier thing.
Mm-hmm.
Being a racist in this situation is probably the relief compared to what he could be, and that's a fucked up thing to say.
Yes, we could be doing that like an outright sociopath here, man. That's frightening.
Yeah, we could be dealing with a man that would just shoot a child in the head and feel nothing.
Yeah, absolutely. And so again, the question
is... Actually, no, you know what? There's actually a quote from a Telltale game known as The Wolf Among Us, and that's specifically with the Crooked Man. And he's specifically talking about his own corruption and the things he's done, but then he flips it, talking about Bigby and the threat to the community he might potentially be, saying, "Oh, of course, I've done awful things, I've done bad things, but when the chips are down and you need somebody to save you, who will protect you from the big bad wolf?"
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And so we really don't want people looking to alternatives to Chauvin, because those people are far worse.
Yeah. Honestly, and the thing to always remember, like I always tell people this about police, is that the people that you're criticizing on Twitter, you're saying should be defunded, those are ultimately the same people that you're going to call 911 to give you help when you need it. All right? So... And there is definitely, I think, in certain communities, the African-American community in particular, they feel like they don't have that trust available to them. Like they can't count on the police to come help them if they need it. And so when we talk about how do we fix this from a training perspective or an organizational perspective, you know, that's a big part of it too. You know, building trust with these communities, ensuring that if you see the police coming towards you, to give you the feeling that, you know, he or she is there to help, not to cause you any problems or potentially end your life. And there are ways that we can, you know, at least there are procedural things we can do to minimize these occurrences. Like, for example, in the United Kingdom, only certain officers are allowed to carry firearms. You have to be specifically trained to carry a firearm if you're a police officer in the United Kingdom.
You know what's really funny to me?
Yeah.
If Americans had an ounce of brains, they would understand that the black community's hatred or fear of police comes from the same thing as their racial prejudices or fear of Muslims.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's because of what might happen. It's because of the ideas that they're taught. It's because of the things that they're shown.
Yeah.
It's born and bred from the same stuff. And let's not kid ourselves. I don't think for a second BLM acknowledges hating or fearing the police as a good thing if you actually sat down and talked to them.
No, they don't. They don't.
In fact, to some degree, maybe they're the alternative to that.
Yeah. I mean, I remember that, and I mean, again, that's like a big part of how, and, Ren, you can feel free to chime in as you want, whether we're right or wrong or anything. But Stephen A. Smith, after the Trayvon Martin killing, I think it was, he said that he once remembered an instance where I think it was one of his aunts told her son when he was going out, don't wear that hoodie. You are not wrong to wear it. It is wrong for people to judge you because of it. But how is that going to help you when you find yourself in a bad spot, when you find yourself in the wrong place in the wrong time? And I've said before that the entire debate between, like, the reason you will never hear me use phrases like all cops are bastards or, BLMs are a bunch of terrorists or anything like that. The reason I'm never going to say any of those phrases because I know people on both sides of the debate, okay? I have a friend of mine who is a black man. He lives in Baltimore, and I know for a fact that just because through no fault of his own, but based on where he lives and how he looks, he could very well end up in the wrong place at the wrong time. And I will confess to you all, every time I hear about a shooting or whatever in Baltimore, I'm worried it's going to be him. The other side of the coin, I have another friend who's a officer for the Detroit Police Department. And if you want an idea of what a defunded police department looks like, look no further than Detroit. And I know you're going to say, well, wait a minute, they had like a fucking M-ramp when they had the protests in the summer. Honestly, I'm amazed they had that, okay? The Detroit PD, and this comes directly from my friend, they have cars that barely work, like the tires are flat, the computers are busted. There is an entire garage of top-of-the-line cruisers purchased by Dan Gilbert that is literally padlocked because of some bureaucratic fuck-up. He told me about this one incident where the entire department basically walked out and went home because IT guys from the city council came and installed a new automated payment system that literally paid them a nickel an hour. So that's what a defunded police department looks like. I mean, that's kind of what and now when I say defunded, I mean in the sense that the money, that no money's going to them at all. Like, not, and the money's not even being redirected to anything more positive. It's just that the money doesn't exist. So, and whenever I hear that there's an officer wounded in Detroit, I'm worried it's my friend. So I know people on both sides of this debate. So that's why it's very difficult for me to come down on one side as being completely, as saying that one side can do no wrong and the other side is just incorruptible, is just corrupted pure evil or whatever you want to call it.
I think it's important to have that too, because it's, to some degree, I feel it's actually living up to the promise and actualizing the American dream.
Yes.
Which is this idea that we're the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we have to be free to fear and what to fear for.
Yeah.
So that we don't hate people for telling us we can't fear. And while we fear, that lights a fire in us. In fact, I think it's where passion comes from. Fear can either ignite hate or fear can ignite passion.
Yeah.
Because I'm genuinely convinced that some of the most brilliant minds of our history can also come from that same fear. But something kept them away from the dark edge. And they instead said, no, you know what? I'm going to fight for something different.
Yeah.
I'm going to do something different.
I do think that you're on to something there about the fear, because I've mentioned to you guys before that I've actually gone to a couple of Black Lives Matter protests. One was in my city last summer. We did a podcast on that one the same day that it happened, because that was the day that Trump tear gassed a bunch of protesters in front of the White House so we could have a photo op. And that protest, it went well. The protesters were passionate but well-behaved. Troy PD was very professional, and it ended with the cops taking a knee and everyone out, and they were happy, and they all went home, and it was fine. The other one I went to was in Chicago, and it was right about the time the BLM movement was starting. It was right after the Chicago PD killed that one kid, and this was in the wake of the death of Michael Brown and all that stuff. And so I walked with the protesters, and I talked with one of the people that was there, and he was a nice enough fellow. We just talked about Rahm Emanuel and what he felt about all this and things like that. Perfectly friendly conversation, despite me being white and him being black. And as I was walking down, and this is down the Magnificent Mile. So for those of you that aren't familiar with Chicago, this is where they got all the fancy department stores and shopping malls and everything. It's where the city elite come and frequent. Obviously, if things were to go south, that's probably where it would be. So they had all the way down the Magnificent Mile, you had the cops lined up on the streets. And I could tell that they were really, really nervous. They were really edgy. They were really anxious. But they weren't hoping and praying oh, I want to go out there and crack some heads. Quite the opposite. They were hoping that nothing was going to go down. Because they knew that if it got ugly, that it was ugly fast. And they just wanted no part of it. They just wanted everyone to just kind of come down here and say their piece and then just go home. That was it. So there definitely is fear, I think, on both sides of the equation here. Is that and a big part, we talked about Philando Castile. Philando Castile is dead because he told the cop he had a gun, and the cop was afraid that he was going to get shot. And so,
and you know what? Both Soups and Adam Conover made this point. The NRA was completely silent on that one. Not even one group of protection of gun rights stood up for Philando Castile.
I was beating the drum on that as well. That was the moment that the NRA lost all credibility for me. I'm like, hey, this is literally your job. This is a law-abiding gun owner who was killed for no reason.
Meanwhile, they got this black spokesperson, Colin Noir, going on the Bill Maher show. And that's what tells me it's all fake, though, because Colin Noir even talks about the racial sub-issue of gun control in the United States, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what do those words matter when people won't act on the ideas those things express?
Yes.
No rule. You express an idea, you better damn well live some core facet of it. If it's an idea that's still in the works, experimental, subject to change, I can let you get away with believing in some aspects of it. But if you do not practice what you preach, maybe there is some point or some facsimile in life where people should not take you seriously.
Yeah, absolutely.
You don't care. Why should I? You don't care. Why should I? Why am I the sole obligant to fucking care when you don't?
Mm-hmm.
You who expressed the idea in the first place.
Yes.
I feel like I'm preaching to the choir. Jesus.
All right. I think we're just about... Gonzo, how are we doing on time here, buddy?
This recording's been on for about an hour 51, going almost 2 hours.
We're good.
All right. I think we should close on a Chris Rock bit, because Chris Rock has a pretty good joke I think is relevant here. I'm going to post it for you guys.
Well, here's the thing, man. Whenever the cops gun down an innocent black man, they always say the same things, man. They always say the same thing. It's like, well, it's not most cops. It's just a few bad apples. It's just a few bad apples. Bad apple. That's a lovely name for murderer. It's like, how'd they get that one? Bad apple. That almost sounds nice. I mean, I've had a bad apple. It was tart, but it didn't choke me out. Here's the thing. I know it's hard being a cop. I know it's hard. I know that shit's dangerous. I know it is, okay? But some jobs can't have bad apples, okay? Some jobs, everybody gotta be good. Like pilots. You know? American Airlines can't be like, most of our pilots like to land. We just got a few bad apples that like to crash in the mountains. Please bear with us.
Got a few bad apples.
Got a few bad apples. Yeah, most of our pilots like to land. We just got a few bad apples, like crashing in the mountains. You know. Yeah. This is the reason, by the way, I'm making it a daily point to spend some time on Microsoft Flight Simulator every day, so that in the event I'm ever on an A320neo and there's a hijacker or the pilot has a heart attack or whatever, I at least know how to fly the plane.
Yeah, you're not going to wind up like the people that crashed the plane in the middle of a field trying to take it back. Those people are heroes still, but...
They are heroes, yeah. Well, they also had to go in at the very last minute, and the hijackers were trying to crash the plane. I'm not going to wait that long. I'm going to go right in there as soon as I can.
Yeah, I think a lot of those people knew they were going to die because there are records of those people having called their families and telling them goodbye.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Like, I think they knew they were going to die. There was a high likelihood they were.
Yeah, for what it's worth, actually, it's very interesting is that... the FBI recently released some portions of the CVR, and the CVR, it does make it sound like that they got into the cockpit. Like no one was sure if whether or not they were able to actually get in there or not, but it does sound like that they got into the cockpit, and they probably had their hands on the controls and trying to pull up. But by that time, the plane was basically going out of control at supersonic speeds, and even the best pilot in the world, even Chuck Yeager himself, probably wouldn't be able to pull it out of that one.
I actually remember seeing a movie based on that too.
Oh, 1993. Oh, it's a spectacular movie. It's an amazing movie.
Yeah, it was literally the end. Obviously, this was like theatrically staged, but I like to imagine it genuinely happened. This whole massive swarm of people are just surrounding this one fucking terrorist guy, fighting him over the wheel.
Yeah,
and then it just shows the perspective of the plane crashing into the field, and that was like really sad.
Oh,
but at the same time, it gave you hope.
Honestly, every time I watch that scene, and that's a really good movie, by the way. Paul Green, I think
they were punching him and shit too. Like they went over.
Yeah, they did. Like Paul Greengrass, I think, was the guy who made United '93. I'm gonna verify that. Really,
like apparently, when Americans interpret that story, we like to believe they fought like hell.
Oh yeah. Yeah, he was director 1993, but he actually did a lot of research into making it as accurate as possible. A lot of the dialogue from like all the people that weren't on the plane, because obviously we don't know what happened on the plane, but a lot of the dialogue from the other people were based on like the actual air-to-ground transcripts and stuff like that was going on 9/11. And in fact, the guy in the movie who played the director of the FAA, that was Ben Slaney. That was the real director of the FAA who was asked to come in and play himself in the movie. Not only that, it was his first day on the job. By the way, inadvertently, I don't want to paint this as a bad thing, but I do genuinely feel that sometimes inspiring stories like that can also inspire hatred. Because I do think back to this movie, and back when I was a little more Islamophobic, right? Yeah.
It was largely because of this belief that everybody that practiced in Islam wanted to kill me, that their country was essentially teaching them they wanted to kill me, and that it was good, and that it was what God wanted.
I am not proud to admit that I had a similar mindset at the time, and there was a lot of anxiety about 1993 because it was the first movie that was really made about 9/11. And
I didn't think much of it though, right? Like the way I looked at it, right? Their government is making them want to kill me. They've grown up their whole lives.
It's not even their government. It's not even their government.
No. Don't tell me the facts. This is the bullshit I believed.
Oh, okay.
This is the bullshit I believed.
Okay.
Was this idea that their government was so nigh infallible and had so much control of their lives that they'd raised and told all of them under their core tenets of faith that they wanted to kill us. And that it's not simply that they hate us, but it is that they believe the very word of their God told them they want to kill us and that it's a good thing. That's as far as my belief system went. I had this whole thing plotted out in my head that the entire nation of Islam was just this really evil place, right? Any place that practiced Islam just had like these imams that talk about fucking defecating in the faces of Americans. That's how crazy it was back when I thought these things, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't just fear, but it was this belief that there is nothing I can do to change it, that these people will believe this and will always believe this, and I must protect myself. And then, having believed that and grown up as a kid believing that, right? Going into my my adolescent years believing that, going into teenage years believing that. I remember seeing the film of the people that fought in the cockpit, and the only thing I thought was, I don't want to let these people in this country for the off chance that someone I love is on that plane and has to make that decision.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to lose somebody because some jackass wanted to make a point. And let's be honest. If you were somebody who lost a family member in 9/11, I'd be surprised if you weren't racist after that. If you weren't Islamophobic after that. Because it was specifically brown people that killed your family.
Well, remember, even more specifically, 15 of the 19 hijackers were Saudi Arabian. And that was, we've talked about this in the program.
That don't paint a good picture.
We've talked about this in a program before. That was a huge disaster for the Saudi government and they quickly, and not to mention bin Laden himself as a Saudi national, they very, very quickly denounced the attackers and Al-Qaeda in general, with some of them going so far as to say, how dare they call themselves Muslim? They wanted, because they knew, Islamophobia aside, that they were facing a huge blowback for this whole thing.
Do you know what we weren't shown in our indoctrination post 9/11?
What?
That we weren't shown that often.
Oh yeah, I mean we weren't
shown Saudi princes condemning the attack. What we were shown was brown people wanted to kill us, and they've been putting anthrax in our mailboxes.
I still remember like the news running footage of people like Afghanistan or whatever like celebrating the attacks. I'm just like, oh, okay, that's how it is. Like
what we find out was it was propaganda. Most Saudi Americans condemned the attack.
Even our own media didn't mention that 15 of the hijackers were Saudis. So,
yeah,
I had to find that out through another movie, which we might watch sometime if we.
Yeah, and oh my God, something that just hurts so much is there are just some people who can't understand. It's going to take a lot of work to condition people out of this because they are literally living every day thinking their family member is going to have to fight to take control of a plane and die in a crash. Yeah. Like that's essentially what some people who are Islamophobic in this country think.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You cannot blame them for feeling that way. Not when they've been told to feel that way. Not when they've been shown to feel that way.
Yeah. I always say that, like, if you are the victim of, like, a traumatic event, whether it's a police shooting, a terrorist attack, or whatever, sexual assault even, you have the right to feel however you want to feel. Because
it's what you do, though. Your actions? No, we have to condemn your actions.
Yeah. And it's like, for example, I've been watching The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Like pretty much everyone else who has Disney Plus right now. And one of the underlying themes of the show is that there is a kind of like a racial undertone of the show, which at first was handled admittedly kind of clumsily. But the 5th episode, they actually were able to handle it in a very, very good way. So for those of you that haven't watched it, the premise, of course, is that at the end of Endgame, Sam Wilson, Falcon, was asked to be Captain America. Steve implicitly handed the shield to him. But Sam didn't feel like he wanted to do it, and so he gave it to the government, and they gave it to a dude named John Walker, who turned out to be a colossal asshole. But that's not the point. So one of the things that the series kind of explores is what does it mean for a black man to be Captain America, which even the original comics, when it came to Sam's turn as Cap, didn't touch on that much. And so one of the ways it does this is through the story of a guy by the name of Isaiah. Isaiah was a black super soldier, but he didn't volunteer like Steve Rogers did. Isaiah got the serum through basically the Marvel Universe's version of the Tuskegee experiment. It was literally almost word for word like exactly what happened, that instead of just being given placebos and actually being infected with all kinds of nasty diseases, in the context of the MCU, Isaiah and his other soldiers, black soldiers, were given various versions of the super soldier serum, and they would see what happens. Well, most of them died out because they were given unstable versions. Isaiah became a super soldier. And one day, the Nazis captured a bunch of the survived members of his unit and held them in a POW camp. And the response from the U.S. military was to just bomb the camp, because not only to kill the Nazis, but to get rid of any evidence of the even existing. And Isaiah was like, well, fuck that noise. And so he actually broke them out of that POW camp, not altogether dissimilar to what Steve Rogers did when he went over there. But whereas Steve got a hero's welcome, Isaiah got sent to prison for 40 years and ultimately he sort of broke out and now was kind of hiding because he's afraid if he'll show his face again, then he's going to be killed. But the whole experience left Isaiah incredibly, incredibly bitter. And when Sam talks to him about it, Isaiah outright tells Sam, no self-respecting black man should ever be Captain America. Because to someone like Isaiah, Captain America stands for the government that oppressed him, that screwed him over, and he is not altogether without merit convinced that will try to kill him if he ever tries to show his face anywhere. And Sam brings up, though, a very interesting point when talking with his sister, and he ultimately decides that he is going to pick up the shield and become Captain America. You know, he talks about what Isaiah went through, and he says that if he was in Isaiah's position, he would probably feel the same way. But when he and Bucky even admits to him that he and Steve didn't think about what it would mean for a black man to be Captain America when Steve decided that he was going to give the shield to Sam. But as Sam points out, what would be the point of all this sacrifice and pain and hardship that people like Isaiah went through if Sam didn't keep fighting? And not only is that a great character moment for Sam, I think that really kind of emphasizes what people like Martin Luther King are trying to say. You know, one of the things that we frequently critique on this program about the woke left or the progressive left is the prevailing idea behind the notion that all cops are bastards or that, you know, you can't escape white privilege or whatever. It's this idea that America itself is irredeemable, that America itself has always been racist and will always be racist and should be burned to the ground because it cannot be saved.
Except for the time that we ended slave trade, except for the time that we fought a war overseas to save the world from becoming Nazi because we feared the axis of evil, basically.
Exactly. And so,
except for the time we came together more recently in a fucking hurricane to give each other bottles of water.
Yeah, exactly.
That's kids from drowning.
Yeah, exactly. And that's my point exactly, is that you think about all the sacrifices that, even if you just want to limit it to the African American community, you think about people like Harriet Tubman, Sojourner Truth, Martin Luther King Jr., Malcolm X, and so many others who have literally given their time, their effort, their blood, their sweat, their tears, and unfortunately their lives in many cases, in order to advance the cause of African Americans being treated as equal members of our society, in order to ensure that America lives up to its stated self-evident truth that all men are created equal. And if we are to go out there and say that this country cannot be redeemed, then what was the point of all of that? What was the point of this verdict?
And then if this country can't be redeemed, no one can be redeemed. Because we all stand on its tainted soil, even those who sit there rule on high judging it are tainted.
If this country cannot be redeemed, what was the point of finding Derek Chauvin guilty? What was the point?
You know what? Weeb logic, right? So, you ever seen My Hero Academia, Helios?
I have not, but I'm familiar with it.
So there's a boy in there, Deku, right? Izuku Midoriya, who wants to be a hero, but he was born quirkless, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's this guy, Sir Night-Eye, in about Season 3 that can see the future, and the future interprets infallibly that Deku is going to die to this villain Overdrive, right? Deku is going to die. He's going to die there. He's going to rot in the cavern. You know what he says? He stands up tall and he says, you know what? Even if the future's set in stone, even if it's unchangeable, even if it's true, infallible, I'll stand up tall and I'll smash that future.
Yeah.
And you know what? You know what's really fucking inspiring about that anime? Deku defied time. He did the impossible, which Sir Night-Eye did not think was doable. He changed the future. The course of history through his actions.
He did. Sounds pretty cool.
That's fucking badass.
Yeah.
Deku not only survived, he unlocked the full potential of All for One temporarily, punched the motherfucker with like a fucking shining beacon lightning fist through the stratosphere for like a brief fucking second, which by the way was also sensitivity trained for people prone to seizures by having it slightly shaded so people didn't have seizures when viewing that badass Studio Trigger-esque looking scene. One fucking punch, and this guy that had essentially had Deku quivering looked up in fear as he saw this glowing-eyed fucking figure, this child, deck his ass and down him in one cosmic, collateral, world-smashing punch.
I feel like that sort of epic shot might have been animated by Umakoshi, because I'm thinking about all the badass fight scenes that Yoshihiko Umakoshi, who is also the character designer for that show.
But you know what?
Yeah?
You know what? I think that's why you and me like anime, Ren. Which is like, we have this in common. I think that's why you and me especially really like anime. It doesn't have to be the greatest animating thing in the world, and it doesn't have to be the story. It's clearly like what the writers and the creators working on the show felt, or even the person who wrote the manga. It's what this shit inspires.
Yeah.
And this shit bleeds inspiration. Like, it's fucking hot-blooded, and it's not, like, boastfully fake hot-blooded, right? When the protagonist feels hot-blooded or determined to fucking punch something to smithereens, that's all there is. There's a fucking scene in One Piece where Luffy punches a celestial dragon.
I love that scene.
Because he shoots his friend. Because he shoots his friend. Well, there's a pecking order in the One Piece universe. You don't do that. That's an act of war.
Celestial dragons are the highest of the high in the world government.
Luffy doesn't give a fuck. You hurt my friend, decks the motherfucker with the hardest punch in anime I've ever seen. Yeah. And it's so fucking hard, the entire screen turns white for a brief second. You can literally feel him forcing torque into his fist.
That is like some visual language that you can really only have in like the audio-visual medium of anime.
And here's the thing, Luffy has like this mock anger. He generally gets frustrated in most fights, but he's mostly cheeky. In this, motherfucker was genuinely mad. You could see the veins in his eyes.
He was pissed.
Fuck yeah, that's the kind of guy I want to be. I don't care if it's a fictional character. That's inspiring.
Yeah. Listen, anime has inspired me to go towards fucking my dreams. Well, actually, it was initially a lot of Western cartoons that inspired me, but that's because one of my dreams is to become a professional voice actor. I'm a voice actor now. I'm just not professional. Amateur.
But you know what? This conversation has made me realize something about myself.
What?
It's not progressive ideas or cringy activism or stupid political takes that I hate. What I hate more than anything is the idea of a world without redemption.
Yes.
I will smash that future.
Now, look, I mean, I've said before that I do believe in second chances for everyone. There are exceptions. There are exceptions. Donald Trump right now is at the top of that list, but I believe America is the land of second chances, and so I believe if this is a country where if you can't try to make amends and fix what you've broken, then what are we even doing here? You know.
In fact, in a way, I think when you chalk it all up, the true thing that has probably kept this great American project going, and all the core facets and tenets that fly underneath Old Glory, our great 50-star flag, is that idea of redemption.
Yeah.
And you know what? That's actually exemplified as to why people immigrate to this country. Because I've heard people say, well, you're not the richest. You're not the smartest. You're not the brightest. But I hear stories about this place constantly. Awe-inspiring stories from where I'm from.
Mm-hmm.
And the one thing I can say is this place oozes potential, even though it doesn't look like it.
Yeah. Absolutely. All right. Since we've now gotten our reference in, I think it's a good place to end the program here. Thank you all once again so much for listening. We apologize for those of you that were hoping for more Bioshock. We will be back to that next week, barring anything else going on. As I mentioned, there is a little something going on with Israel. I don't know what the hell the deal is there outside of a thwarted missile attack, but may not be anything. But either way, we will anticipate being back with more Bioshock next week. And since I guess I still have to do the side quests and stuff off the stream, you'll be getting 2 Bioshock videos. So aren't you all lucky? But that's coming next week. Until then, stay positive, test negative, get vaccinated. I'm getting my second shot next Monday. Cannot wait because I got a fucking life to go live. And just take care of yourself out there. Take care, folks.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye, ladies and gentlemen. Remember to like, comment, subscribe. Go ahead and visit our little Discord if that's at all possible. And remember to leave a comment. I want to hear your ideas on this session. Maybe things we can talk about at a later point. Goodbye, ladies and gentlemen.